Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Above the Bar podcast, where each week we belly up to the bar with a new guest, find out what they do, who they are, and what makes them great. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Alrighty, folks, welcome back to the Above the Bar podcast. It's your host, Sean. We have bellied up to the bar today. It is, and I actually paid attention before the show started. I actually looked at the calendar. So there's the first and everything. And it is June 25th here. So that being said, to celebrate the end, this is where I'm not celebrating, but I like food and I like people. So I found a person who likes food and consults people, but not on food. So we're going to just tie it all together. So joining us, and look, folks, I'm in the capital region of New York, so we're going to end up with a lot of people in the capital region. And he's got a great name. And nothing would make for a graver situation than not go ahead and introduce our guest in the best way possible. So joining us all the way from the capital region of New York, it's Mr. Paul Graver.
Hello, Sean. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, brother. So I'm glad to have you on. We're going to be talking to Paul about what it takes to leave a successful career where you've built, your brand, you've become that entrepreneur. If you don't know what that name means, folks, that's basically you've created your brand within another company.
Yeah.
It's also about, hey, how do you go from being that entrepreneur to saying, yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and drop those 20 some years of what I was doing and start my own thing. Does that sound about right, Paul?
Sure. The easy answer is get fired.
Yeah. Well, that is, look, you do that too. I mean, that's one way to do it.
Yeah.
So we're going to be talking about that. But before we get too far, as always, folks, let's get into this a little bit of housekeeping. So over my right shoulder, we got the big board for Sticker and a Cause. If you got something you support, something you believe in, something you want other people to know about that belongs to you, you can always reach out to me on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, TikTok. Our website is theabovethebarpodcast.com. Our email is theabovethebarpodcast@gmail.com. Let me know what you got going on. I'll give you an address where to send that sticker to. You fire me out the sticker. We'll read about you live here on the air. Let everybody know what you got going on. It's a little free advertising for you. As I always say, we like to take care of everybody that bellies up to the bar with us here. But we also got to talk about the people that pay the bills around here. And that's Budget Blinds of East Greenbush, Hudson and Coxsackie, and Schoharie, New York. North America's largest custom window treatment company. They even have places all the way up into Canada. They specialize in everything from blinds, drapes, shutters, shades, tint, you name it. They have an option for you on your windows. And for the rest of this month, it's 20% off of all products, another 5% off of anything that is motorized. And as we always say around here, if you tell them that you're there to belly up to the bar, you let them know that, they're going to take an additional 5% off. So that means if you got some motorized shades you're looking at, folks, you could be getting 30% off that order. And just for hanging out and watching the show with us. So make sure you're checking out Budget Blinds of East Greenbush, Hudson and Coxsackie, and Schoharie, New York, your largest custom window treatment company in North America. So, all right, Paul, how are you today? So let's start with this. So Paul was prepared. I got to grab something here real quick.
All right.
Hold on. Because Paul was way more prepared than I was. I left my glass. Like I brought down fresh, clean glasses. And I left my glass sitting there. So that's a nice Pilsner glass. I would say. I would consider that a Pilsner glass.
Yeah, I mean it's a nice glass. I got a nice IPA over here, nice and chilled and ready to go.
Is it a New York IPA? What are we working with today?
It is. I got to do a shout out to my friends at Artisanal Brew Works in Wilton, New York. Saratoga Squeeze. It's a hazy IPA. My good friend Kurt over there, and so yeah, I got to support my local brewery. So that's what I'm doing.
It's funny you said it's called Saratoga Squeeze.
Yeah.
This is the most upstate New York thing that you can do, especially in the capital region. Yeah. And Saratoga Squeeze, I love it. This is the most only in the capital region, and I've never seen this anywhere else. Can you just put the word Saratoga on it? And instantaneously people are like, well, this is definitely super high quality and it's way healthier than anything else on the planet.
Oh yeah. I mean,
have you ever had Saratoga peanut butter?
It's beautiful. Look at that. Yeah. No, it's good stuff. That's good stuff. Absolutely.
Like, I will tell you folks, Saratoga peanut butter is my favorite peanut butter. especially if you ever get their one called Monkey Boy, it literally just tastes like peanut butter and bananas. It's the wildest thing, but it's a big thing. I was having a meeting with some vendors the other day, and they were like, one of them was from Saratoga, and he was like, yeah, it's weird. Like Saratoga olive oil. There's no olive trees in Saratoga, but you can get Saratoga olive oil.
Have you ever been to that store? That place
I've never been. Yeah. I've heard nothing but great things. Like it's a great, like $15, get a gift for somebody who's visiting.
Absolutely.
That's like their thing. So let me make sure I got this. So you're currently, and we're going to get into the whole consulting you have, and I'm going to jack it up. EXSETIS Consulting. That's yours. You built that, but for 20 years, you have 20 years of experience. And this is weird. For 20 years or more, you have 30 years of experience.
So I got 30 plus years of experience in the paper industry, but 20 of that was specifically at Mohawk Paper down in Cohoes, New York.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you worked for them. And for those who don't know, Mohawk's a pretty major player in the paper game. They have that offshoot next to them that does like the custom stuff, also like the greeting card kind of paper and all that. I don't remember the name.
That was Crane Stationery. Yep.
Right. Yep. Yes, that's it. When I was doing staffing, I can't tell you how many times I tried to get them as a staffing client. Both of them.
Yeah.
They were like, no bueno, not happening.
Yeah.
I tried. But you were a vice president over there, focused on developing quality, customer technical service type stuff, quality protocols. Even worked with some satellite locations, subcontractor stuff, warehouses. I mean, you really were involved in that entire technical and quality piece throughout all of Mohawk, leading different teams, some international stuff. It was a long stretch. I mean, even one of the funniest named cities in New York, Tuxedo. I remember the first time ever seeing it.
Yeah.
Like, there's a
That's where it all started. I mean, once I got out of grad school, I started with International Paper in Tuxedo Park, New York, or their research center.
This is going to sound super odd when I say it this way, but you and my mother could sit down and have an amazing conversation.
Oh, yeah.
Because she worked for, and you might even know the company, who knows, a company called Acme Paper and Supply out of Baltimore. And they're the largest distributor of paper and supply products in the Mid-Atlantic. So all these places, like I grew up with like Solo and Understanding International and some of the other companies. I can't think of the names of them right now.
I mean, the distribution side of that business is huge. I mean, I mean, I mean, you got to give kudos to the office, Dunder Mifflin, that's a paper merchant. I mean, but I mean, the paper merchant side of the business, I mean, Mohawk sold most of its product through merchants.
Well, that was always the thing. I know we're talking. Well, welcome to Paper Time, folks. But I know from like talking to my mom, like, we all think of like the red Solo cup, like, if you didn't know it, folks, you can't buy Solo cups from Solo. Solo won't sell those to you because
all through distributors.
They only go through distributors, and they want those big names, and then they let that distributor push it out because you're just not, you're just not who they want in that sense. And I don't mean that in a mean way. So you're doing this for 30 years. Then what happens?
Well, COVID hits and everything goes sideways as everyone experienced in a lot of places. And, Mohawk had to make some pretty hard decisions and, get some numbers down. And, what do? You cut from the top. And, I had to take my lumps. I mean, no hard feelings. I mean, they're a great company. I had a great time there. But they had to do what they had to do. We all know it was a tough time. And
absolutely.
So, and I look back on it and I said, part of it was, I think, not to my own detriment, but I created a solid team below me, with procedures and policies and documentation and all that stuff, where they could take my role and split it up amongst different people and keep rocking and rolling. And so I sort of worked my way out of a job maybe, but, that's how it goes sometimes. And so, no hard feelings. It was fine, and so then, I joked. I said, at that point, I turned the dining room into the Paul Graver 2.0 command center. Let's figure it out.
You did such a good job of leading, but you know what? You did exactly what we used to talk about in the Marine Corps. my job is not to oversee everything. My job is to make sure that everybody that works for me can do my job.
Exactly. And can do my job and want to come back tomorrow. And, they want to do their bit. And, you're a fool to think that, oh my God, this place could never survive without me. Oh. Yeah, it will. And, you do what you got to do. And so, again, no hard feelings. It had a great run there. Learned a lot. Made a lot of good relationships. People I'm tapping into today to work on the consulting side. I'm tapping into a lot of the people I met along the way.
So. Well, that was going to be my next thing. So from there, how long do you sit on your hands before we're now into the consulting business?
Yeah. So, I had a little segue there into something different. Obviously it was COVID. It was a tough time to find work, but, a friend of a friend hooked me up with a job, and I went completely out of my comfort zone, working for a small company here in the capital region that did pre-screen background checks, like,
oh wow,
pre-employment background investigations. And I kind of helped run that company for a few years. It was interesting. It was different. I learned a lot about a completely different business. It was a little weird being that it was so out of my wheelhouse initially, but you do what you got to do. And you realize that skills you've built along the way are applicable in a lot of different places. So, it was the right thing until it wasn't, so I did that for a while, and then I parted ways with that company last spring. And that's when I'm like, okay, now I really want to be out on my own. Was kind of the enlightening moment where I'm like, you know what? I talked to some people. I was reaching out to these old colleagues, looking for something to do, and people would say, hey, you could consult with us. I'm like, hey, I think I could. And that got the wheels turning. And I'm like, that's what I'm going to do.
And consulting's a weird one for me. So you hear that term all the time.
It's overused. It
really is. So help everybody who's watching it. And look, folks, if you're just joining us, we're talking to Paul Graver. He is the I like principal better than I do owner. Or I think it's way better. Isn't it a way better term?
It is. I'm the principal. Yeah.
He's the principal at EXSETIS Consulting, helping companies unlock their potential and drive results. We're also going to talk about Grill Pantry here in a moment also, but tell everybody, like, what is a consultant? Like, if I needed a consultant, what is that?
So it's someone with expertise who can come in and help you in specific areas. So, the benefit of working with a consultant is you're gaining, I got 30 plus years of experience. You don't have to go and hire me at the rate that I would expect to get paid for, you hire me full time. You can bring me in part time. I can come in, do specific things to help you in specific areas with specific expertise, get your team on board, get the results you need, and then I'm out. And you've invested some money in the time that I'm spending with you, but you're not paying my benefits. You're not doing my taxes, all that kind of stuff. So there's a real benefit because it's a more of a almost like a surgical, approach into solving problems, bringing in someone with specific skills to come help you in specific areas to then you move on.
Okay. But when people see the term consulting, like, how should they approach that from, like, hey, he's with a consulting firm? Are consulting firms specific to areas? Are they a general term? Like, how does that part of it work?
There's a lot of different ones out there. Some are very specific, and they have teams and they deploy different people. Other ones have a bunch of different, departments. They have an accounting team, they have a HR team, they have this and that, and they bring in different people to address those kind of things. But I'm a one-man show. I offer what I offer. I do very specific things focused on process improvement, profitability, quality systems, and that's really where I'm going to come in, a very focused approach.
So you're focused more on, like, the manufacturing side to it?
Well, that's where my kind of target client, I think, is small and mid-sized manufacturing. And I say that in that I think, I'm saying like 25 to 250 employees kind of size is where my head's at, in that companies of that size, typically you have a small management staff. They're all wearing multiple hats. They're all spinning around, dealing with the chaos of the day. No one has time to step back and look at where the opportunities to improve are. What's the data telling you as far as what's happening? And that's where the name of this company came from, EXSETIS. It's a made-up name.
I was going to ask you what the hell that meant. So
extra set of eyes, which is what I claim to be, a extra set of eyes to help you look at the stuff you don't have time to look at, to get after your pain points, get after your profitability, and move to the next level.
So extra set. Okay.
Yeah, it's a made-up word.
I get it. I mean,
so it's easy. It's easy to Google, and the domain was cheap. So,
listen, you're hitting all the best parts of it right there. So you've got that going on. What was that conversation like, though? And I ask all small business owners, all entrepreneurs, this question, which is when you have to look at your family and go, so dad's leaving the job that's putting food on the table right now, and I'm just going to go do my own thing. I know what that conversation at my house was like. What was that conversation for you like?
Well, I was in a different situation. My two kids are grown and out of the house, both doing very well, being successful in their own world. And so it's just me and my wife now. And so, some of that pressure's off. I mean, I'll be honest with you, Sean, probably about 15, 18 years ago, I was looking at doing a similar thing.
Okay.
But then when the kids were small, they hadn't gone through college yet. I'm like, all that's in front of you. And you're like, okay, once you get past the fear of losing everything, it sounds like a great idea. It's a little terrifying to jump out on your own. So, I mean, I considered it at that time. That particular thing that I was working on didn't come through. But now I'm in a different point in my life. It's me and my wife. My kids are grown. They're gone. They're successful. They're doing their own thing. And be honest with you, I'm a little tired of working 30 plus years. I mean, I was in manufacturing, 24/7 operation, calls in the middle of the night, crazy weekend schedules, all that kind of stuff. It's, I did my time is the way I look at it. But so now it's like the conversation was, I want to kind of be in control of my own time. My daughter has I have two granddaughters now, so they're little. They're going to be 2 and 4 this August. So we want to be part of their lives. We want to have time to go down and spend with them. We have elderly parents that we're also taking care of. So we want that kind of flex. So I want flexibility in my life. And, so it seemed like it still does like the right thing to do. It's still a little, I tell people it's exciting and terrifying all at the same time, because nothing's given. You gotta work for everything you're going to get. I mean, I have some clients. It's steady, but it's not where I want it to be yet. It's still growing,
right?
But I'm networking like crazy, doing the whole LinkedIn thing, cold calling, all that stuff. So the sales side of doing something like this on your own is a pretty big lift, and you got to be ready to do it. And it's a commitment to get out there and really, work it.
It is. I mean, I understand exactly what you're saying. And for those of you that are watching us right now, if you have questions for Paul, you're curious, maybe you're thinking about starting your own business, trying to figure out what it takes to step out and make that move, whatever it is. Or maybe you have a business and you're like, hey, maybe do I need a consultant, or where do you make that decision? That's another great question, is when is I always feel like the right time, when you feel like the right time for a consultant for your company, you've already missed the boat.
You missed it. So, that's my message. It's like right now. We're not going to go down the political rabbit hole here, right. But there's a lot of, anxiety out there right now, economic anxiety, social anxiety. There's a lot going on. Watch the news for 5 minutes. Okay. There's tons of stuff going on. People are nervous about what they're going to do next. I get that. But my message is, now's the perfect time to focus on the things that are in your control. Don't worry about there's tariffs, there's all this, there's stuff going on out there. I get it. Stuff to worry about, stuff to focus on. But now is the time to focus on the things that are in your control. Look at your process. Look at your quality system. My big thing is process mapping. When's the last time you stepped back and looked at your process end to end and see where there are redundancies, where there are things that, that just became habits, good and bad, that could you can shave 5%, 10%, 15% in a lot of places in an operation just by looking at it, having that extra set of eyes to go in and look at what you're doing. But I understand, like I said, small mid-sized companies, sometimes you just don't have time. You're dealing with the chaos of the day. This client's calling, this shipment hasn't showed up, this machine broke down, there's something going on in the break room, blah, blah, blah. There's stuff to deal with, and you never have time to step back, look at what's going on, analyze it, find those redundancies. Because like it or not, especially if it's a company that's been around for a little while, the guy doing the job or the person doing the job right now is doing it because the person before him or her showed him how to do it. But how that all started, nobody remembers anymore. And is that the best way to do it? Probably not. It's habits that have grown over time. And just think about the stuff you do around your house. You get habits, you skip steps, you do stuff. That's human nature. But from a business perspective, you got to look at all those steps and understand that there's key things that you got to work on. So that's kind of the message is, for companies that are just kind of humming along, understand that there's always opportunity. And sometimes you got to take a little bit of an effort to go after them, because what's the cost of doing nothing? There are things that are bleeding out of your company has that issue on some scale, one, here or there. But what's the cost of doing nothing versus the cost of fixing those things?
So you bring up a good point. And I always say, the name above the bar, because all my equipment's above the bar and we keep the conversation above bar. But what you're talking about is something I understand fairly well. So one of my questions for you is, and for those that are watching, please give us a like, share, follow, all those kind of things. It makes a big difference for us. But one of my questions then becomes, your approach, is it a Six Sigma approach? What is your, because a lot of what I'm hearing is this is streamlining. This is looking, instead of going from A to B to C, how can we take B out and make it go A to C?
Yeah. So, I am versed in Six Sigma. I was a Six Sigma green belt. I'm not a black belt, but I was a green belt, but I'm familiar with all those things. I was an ISO 9001 lead auditor. I got trained in all that stuff. So I'm familiar with all those things. And a lot of those programs, if you really get down to the bones of what they offer, it's all common sense stuff. It's common sense stuff, how to be organized, how to be diligent, how to be disciplined, how to document what you're doing. Six Sigma is big about statistics and using the math and the numbers to hone in to eliminate defects and that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of math and a lot of methods. And a lot of that stuff is great, but a small company sometimes doesn't have the bandwidth to take on, like, I'm going to be Six Sigma or I'm going to get ISO certified. But you can certainly take advantage of pieces and parts of all those disciplines to organize what works for you. I mean, the other thing that I tell people is every company, and everybody knows this, every company has a personality. It is driven by the people that are there. It's driven by the ownership. It's driven by the history. And you have to work with what works. What works for this company. I mean, my message is I'm not going to come in and say, oh, you're doing it all wrong. You got to change everything. Yes, change is terrifying, and change isn't always better. You build on what works. What's worked for you, what's been successful for you, and build on that success. Learn how your company works best together and build on that. One I tell people I love doing like home repairs and stuff. And those kind of things. I'm that kind of a guy. But I watch a lot of these shows on TV, and one that I love to watch is called Maine Cabin Masters. It's a bunch of guys. Isn't that a great? It's a great show. So but I like the front half of the show when they strip it down and fix the structure of the building. Uncle Larry put this addition on back in 1957, but now it's sagging. Well, because he didn't do it right.
Can we call bullshit on that show for a sec? Can we call bullshit on one thing?
Yes.
In that show, when they're like, so this was Preacher Island. We, all the islands out here had a preacher on them. And then they go in and they're like, they bring all the excavator equipment in and they're like, so we want to rebuild this whole cabin. We've got $35,000 and you can take trees off the property. And you're like, dude, I can't get my bathroom done for that price. And these guys are like, Sure, no problem. We'll tear the whole place
Yeah,
down.
I've always questioned the economics of the show.
Yeah, that never
Yeah,
makes sense when I watch that show because we watch it. We watch the reruns. I'm also a
yeah.
big fan of what is Homestead Rescue. You ever watch
Yes,
that?
yes,
That's another episode. Left
yeah,
turn for a second, but go back to
yeah.
what you were saying. I
No,
apologize.
but what I talk about is looking at the structure. What is the foundation like? Is it what's rotting? How do you build the structure, and then you put all the nice stuff on top of that. But you got to have the structure and the base and the foundation right first, and that's what I talk about with process, with quality systems. You got to get back to the basic structure and the foundation of what you're doing, what you're trying to do, and then you build back on that. And add the extra features, add the extra stuff, but you got to have a solid foundation because that's what's going to keep you going. That's what your teams are going to keep building on, but that's what's going to give you opportunity for growth. If you want to grow your company, you can't grow it on something that doesn't have a good structure.
So that kind of goes back to a question, and my background being sales. So like I've thought about, if I ever left what I do currently, maybe I do sales consulting because I love sales and I can talk sales all day long. But one of the big things I always talk about is sales is fundamentals.
Yeah.
I can teach anything to anyone, but if your fundamentals are broken, I used to always use the example of, gosh, now I don't even remember his name anymore. Came out the draft with Eli Manning and then he went to San Diego when Eli wouldn't. I can't think of his name right now. It wasn't, God, I can't think of the quarterback's name. So it's escaped me, but I used to always use it as an example. Yeah. And it was, this guy's fundamentals sucked. He actually ended up going to jail. And now he's a motivational speaker, which is always wild to me. And then Eli went on to Super Bowls.
Yeah.
And so how do you get a company, and I know you're showing them these things, but to get back to the fundamentals so that they can build those other things? Because like you said, like a house, your frame is your frame. The rules are for a frame are always the same.
Well, you got to go back to what's the mission of the company? What are you making? What you got to get back to the fundamentals of how the company, maybe even how the company started. What was the goal here? And who are your customers? What are your products? What are the systems you're using? And really kind of, my big thing is process mapping is huge. You step back and you really look at the process from the beginning of the operation all the way through to the end, and all the steps in between. I mean, I'm a big, a fan of. Let's not dive into all kind of software solutions. Let's put Post-it notes on the wall. Okay, let's sit back and put Post-it notes on the wall. What are you doing? Because then you can move them around. You can adjust things, right? And you can really focus on how that. In a perfect world, you put it this way: in a perfect world, how should this thing run? And then you put the real world on, and then you superimpose the real world on top of that, and figure out how you got to maneuver around some things, because nothing's the perfect world doesn't exist, but that's a good place to start. And like I said, you superimpose the real world on top of it, and then figure out how you're going to go after things. There may be some software solutions you need, whether it's a data collection system or an MRP system or whatever. There may be things you need to do, but fundamentally, what's your mission? What are your products or your services or whatever you're pushing out? Who's responsible for what? And then you go from there, and then you define all those things, and that's going to give you your basic structure.
I think that definition is the huge piece. And the quarterback I couldn't remember was Ryan Leaf.
There you go.
Do you remember Ryan Leaf?
I've heard the name. Yes.
See, that's what I'm saying. Like, so you're trying to teach people to be Eli Manning and not Ryan Leaf.
Yeah.
It makes sense. So how, so a lot of times when people are in this process, starting off a new business, you had contacts throughout different industries and manufacturing within the capital region. But what has been your process for business development, while at the same time, what have you found that, hasn't worked that you thought, oh, this is how I'm going to do this?
Well, first off, you have to own what you're doing. You have to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. You have to define who you are and what you're offering, because you're not going to be everything to everybody. There's going to be business you're probably going to want to walk away from because it's not what you need to do.
How hard is that?
It's hard. It's hard, but you got to be, careful what you wish for, because, you can walk into something that all of a sudden now you're outside your comfort zone and you can get yourself into trouble. I'm not going to claim to be something I'm not. So I define what I am. I built my brand. I did work with a guy, got a nice website set up that really defines who I am and what I can do. And that's what I always come back to, that circle back to who you are, what you defined yourself as, and stick to that. And I'm learning network. You got to network all the time. You got to meet with people, even, and the frustrating thing is, like, I'm meeting with a banker. Banker's not going to, he doesn't need any process help, but the banker maybe knows somebody who does. Right. So it's not who you know, it's who you know who knows somebody else. That's the name of the game, or it goes 3 or 4 times cycles where you got to keep getting yourself out there, but stay true to who you are, keep putting yourself out there, and, kind of build it will come kind of mentality. But it's scary. I mean, it's scary in that, okay, here I am, a year into my consulting company, and I don't have like a boatload of clients. I have some, but it's not exactly where I wanted it to be. But I think what I'm learning is it's a slow process, and you gotta own it. You gotta embrace it and understand that it takes time, especially if I look at what I'm doing. I'm consulting. I'm saying I'm going to help you make your process better. Well, if you want to make your process better, one, you got to admit that your process needs help. Okay. Which is a big thing to cross. But then it's a trust build. I mean, who's this guy? Who's this Paul Graver guy? And that I'm going to share my dirty secrets with him on how my company's messed up in the background, and he's going to help me. Why am I going to tell this guy all this stuff? So there's a trust build that has to occur. And that comes with multiple conversations, and you get people to the point where they want to work. And so it's a long process. Yeah. And that's the part I wasn't ready for that initially. I get it now, and I'm fine with it. And, but you got to constantly feed the machine. You got to have, 20 variables out there, variable people that you're talking to, and maybe 2 of them will come to fruition. The rest will fade away. And the other thing that I'm learning is I'm number 27 on your list, where you're number 1 on my list. And, it's a little humbling, but it's good. It's okay. Little humility gives you a lot of strength if you can take it.
Especially, I mean, the roles that you've had over the last few years of your career, you were number 1 on everyone's list. You were end all be all conversations in a lot of situations.
I was the go-to guy. Yeah.
Now you're the guy who's going, hey.
Yeah. Would you open my email, please?
Yeah. I mean, we've had a few different people on here talking about marketing stuff. Have you? Yeah. And one of them I thought was absolute genius. Guy walked. It was a sales thing. Guy walked into an office with a briefcase handcuffed to his wrist and said, I need to see Mr. Whoever. And they were like, why? He's like, listen, this is who I need to speak to. I can't speak to anyone else. And finally the guy came out and he's like, how can I help you? I have something. Open the briefcase up and handed him a brochure and then left. How genius. Like you're never going to forget that person.
Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah. No, I mean,
And it was just to get the conversation started. And networking has changed from COVID, where, pre-COVID, you better go walk in if you're going to see someone. To during COVID, everybody was like, hey, we'll never walk into an office again.
Yeah.
To post-COVID, I think we're back to, look, man, don't send me an email. Don't expect me to be on your Zoom. I've got work to do. Yeah. What are some of the things that you've tried that you're like, this kind of works for me, or you're thinking it might be working?
Well, I've got much more involved on LinkedIn, which I'm a self-proclaimed social media caveman. I never really got into any of that stuff, But I'm living on LinkedIn, looking at it every day, putting stuff out there, searching, reaching for people. I have a couple other databases I dig into to try and just find people, potential prospects that I'll reach out to them on LinkedIn. Yeah, get some traction. There's some people just don't look at LinkedIn, and so it's like you can't just depend on that. Try to find emails of people, but the big thing is just networking, getting your name out there. I mean, I've joined a couple chambers. I'm out there meeting people. Because 6 months from now, someone say, I met a guy, this guy Paul Graver. I think he could probably help you out. I think he gave me his card. It's here somewhere. Boom, and that's going to come to fruition over time. But it's a slow process. Just meeting people, getting my message out there, telling them what I do, why I do what I do, and just keep working it.
And look, folks, for those of you that are just joining us and you're watching, again, we're talking with Paul Graver. He is the principal at EXSETIS Consulting, helping companies unlock their potential and drive results. He's also, and we're going to get into at the second half, we're going to get into what Grill Pantry is.
Yeah, we got to get into it.
Him and I are going to have to figure out a time because I make a pretty amazing 3-2-1 ribs.
Okay.
Like enough that my grandchildren and my son, when he had his 8th birthday, that's all he wanted from dad.
Okay. All right.
You may have to find a time where we get a little of the sauce. You can put me in all the directions in the capital region, and I can find where we can get that. So we're going to talk about that here in a minute.
We'll talk about barbecue soon enough. Yeah.
I love barbecue. Dude, I actually own at this point. I realized that the other day I own 3 smokers, 2 flat tops. Everywhere I set up business, I have to have this with me. But so continuing on talking about the consulting piece to it, you talk about your family. I know for me with my business, my oldest son works for me. My wife assists me in my business. Is this something that they assist in, or it's more like, you go ahead and you do it, Dad?
They're super supportive. My wife, my 2 kids, my wife's helping me find leads. She's always digging, looking for stuff. And my son, my daughter's a mental health counselor. My son's an engineer. He's a little more in my wheelhouse as far as, so he'll talk me up if someone, if he thinks he can get me a lead, he'll do it. But they've just been super supportive of what I'm doing. They remember what it was like when I was gone all the time working, and like, Dad, you deserve to have a little time on your own. And so they've been super supportive of it. And, if I need anything, they're there for me. It's awesome.
I just thought about this. Have you ever thought about, and this is going to sound crazy, and once it sounds crazy, then I'll explain to you why. Have you ever thought about reaching out to staffing firms about consulting for manufacturing?
Yeah.
Because when I worked in staffing, that's all I worked with was manufacturing throughout the capital region.
Yeah.
That was where all my contacts came from. I wanted them because they had large hiring pools they needed, so you knew everyone.
Yeah, no, I'm working that list as well, because and granted their focus is to get someone to hire to go in there, but I've talked to some of them and said, hey, listen, offer me up as a fractional, someone to help. That's always a possibility. In that something if a company is having trouble finding what they need, but they need something in the meantime, I'm your guy.
I did listen. I did that. I actually had a couple of times guys that were ISO and 6 Sigma guys. I can't think of what the other one is right now. Lean. And I had some guys that were like super high level black belts and all into it. And companies were like, look, I can't afford what they need to come in as a production manager for those kind of roles. But I would be like, hey, the guy's willing to come in and do 6 months with you as a direct hire, 6 months contract. And companies would be like, really? I'm like, yeah, consulting work. And we would do it all the time. from a business model standpoint. I just thought about that. I forgot that I've done that
I'll be
multiple
honest with
times.
you, Sean. I'm looking at every angle because I don't know. I don't know what I don't know as far as
Exactly.
where else I can help people. I mean, I have skills that I think and a skill set that I think can be beneficial in a lot of places. Some of which I don't even know what they are yet. And I met with a local municipality here. I met the mayor, and he was talking about his building permit process being antiquated. I'm like, oh, it's a process. I can help you with that.
Yeah.
So we had a great conversation. It didn't have the budget for it, but again, it's not manufacturing. It's something else. But again, it's a A to Z process. Process is process, whether you're making widgets or doing whatever. And I'd met with the guy, a few weeks ago, and he was, we were kind of spitballing a little bit. And he said, "What about like a law firm?" I'm like, "Sure." I don't ask me anything about the law,
Right.
But as far as getting business in the door, how you're handling your business, because a lot of people get into they get excited about making a product or doing a business or whatever. That's their passion, but they don't know how to run a business.
Yes.
They know what they're passionate about. They know the product they want to make or whatever they want to do, but they don't understand how to run a business or run a process. And like I say, they're visionary and they're excited about what they're doing. And that's where you want to bring in someone like me to say, okay, you shine where you're going to shine, but let me help you put these ducks in a row so you can be successful. Because there's all these things you need to think about if you want this business to succeed and then grow. You got to have these systems in these processes in place that you can depend on as you grow, as you bring people on, all that kind of stuff. People don't think about that necessarily up front. They're so focused on the thing they love, and the process has to be there.
I got to get you over to meet. I can't think of her name right now. The lady over at the V that deals with small businesses for veterans, because I can't tell you how many times my son, 3 businesses he's tried. Every one of them has hit a tough spot, not because they weren't great ideas. It's when you start getting into the processes, that's really what stumps people, especially when you own a business or you've run a company, a large part of a company, and you start going, well, all right, man, well, who's your lawyer? Who's your bookkeeper? Who's your accountant? What's your process for new business? What's your process for following up? Can you? Oh, what you really want to watch somebody's head spin? Ask them what their break even is. What's your break even? Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. And for folks, if you don't know what a break even is, that means when you've paid everybody, how much do you have to make to pay everybody before you make $1? Yeah. And when people don't understand what their break even is, it is just
because you started a business. I got to buy this. I got to get that. I got to do this. I got to do that. And all of a sudden, bang, you're underwater, and you don't have a process that's going to bring you back. That's why businesses fail.
That's why franchises do so much better. Mm-hmm. The numbers are crazy. It's something like 80%. Correct me.
You know why? Because they have a process to fall back on. That's it. Exactly.
It's like 5%.
The process is already built for them.
Yep.
They just have to live by it.
It's something like 5% of franchises fail in the first 5 years compared to other small businesses. It's something like 80%. It's like crazy, the number. It's well, look, folks, as you know, we're getting close to that time, and I've enjoyed talking to Paul so much. I even forgot to look over here and pull up my commercial. So give me a second, because we all know this is the New Scotland Spirits last call. Discover the spirit of the Highlands right here in New York at New Scotland Spirits. We're more than just whiskey makers. We're storytellers, distillers of heritage, and champions of locally grown grain. Every bottle is handcrafted, bold, and unapologetically New York. Whether you're sipping, gifting, or stocking your bar, make it something memorable. Choose New Scotland Spirits. Visit newscotlandspirits.com and taste the tradition. New Scotland Spirits, distilled with pride, enjoyed with purpose. You like that? You like the voice too, didn't you? I know you.
That was good.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Now, as we've kind of hinted at it here a little bit.
All right.
Paul is not just a one-trick pony. who has spent 30 years making the most amazing paper mache, paper airplanes, and what's the other
A lot
paper?
of printing paper, a lot of flat, boring printing paper.
Okay, never
Anyway.
mind. None of it was really cool. None of it was origami.
Oh, some of it was cool. Here, a couple little tidbits. So when I was at the height of when I was at Mohawk, one of the big things we did, we supplied paper for Shutterfly. You think of all those holiday cards you get, that was all our paper. And that was paper I was up to here with specifications and stuff, everything else. And so we had some cool projects along the way. One of the coolest ones was for 2 years, is back a while ago. We made the stationery paper for the White House.
Oh, that's cool.
That was cool. I got a sample upstairs.
Now I'm just curious because like things like that, was there like special like secret squirrel where they like, we need to look at the paper, we need to make sure that no improper ink has been used in this?
There was very, very tight specifications. Down to every, it had a watermark on it, had all kinds of special stuff on it. Yeah, it was very, very particular. Yeah, it was cool. It was cool to be involved in something like that.
When I went to the Gunny's course in the Marine Corps, we had one of the crew chiefs for Air Force One, and it's weird. Their ranking in the Air Force is different. A master sergeant in the Marine Corps is an E8. A master sergeant in the Air Force is an E7.
Okay.
And this guy's like, he's a master sergeant, and we're like, it jacked us all up. But he went through the whole course with us. It was really cool to get to meet the guy. And when we graduated, we had the pilot and co-pilot for Air Force One come to our graduation, which was just, it was like it was a colonel and a lieutenant colonel. Sidebar. But the other thing you're doing,
yes,
which feeds into the chubby kid that lives inside of my soul, is this, and they're an important aspect of all of our lives, is Grill Pantry. So tell everybody a little bit what Grill Pantry is.
So I have another business, and it's the Grill Pantry. Kudos to my wife; she came up with the name, the Grill Pantry. So it's we make barbecue sauce. It's a family business. My wife and I are the owners, but my kids have been involved. My daughter does a lot of the label design. It helps me with social media posts. My son has helped me with production, does some sales as well. He's actually got it on the menu at a couple bars that he goes to near his house in Rhode Island. What's that?
I said, oh, nice. I was just saying that's cool.
So I got stuff right. Oh, you can't see. So I got bottles. I got bottles of our products. So we have 3 different products. We have Whiplash, we have Get Jacked, and we have, Hat Trick. I can't see the glare. Hat Trick and Get Jacked. Oop, there we go. There it is. And my daughter actually drew that little guy there.
So I'm assuming the Get Jacked is the spiciest of the 3.
Spicy one. So they're kind of mild, medium, and hot. But it all started years ago when I went. We were invited to a friend's Super Bowl party, and I said, "Oh yeah, we'll bring chicken wings." So I mean, I'm grilling these wings, and I go to the fridge. I start pulling all kinds of stuff out of the fridge. I make some kind of sauce to put on the wings, So I make this stuff, and everybody loved it. They're like, "Oh my god, you had to give me the recipe." I'm like, "Yeah, I don't have a recipe. I just threw a bunch of stuff together until it tasted the way I wanted it to taste." And they're like, well, you got to make it again. I'm like, okay. So, I mean, year after year, you're going to bring your wings, right? Like, yeah, I'm going to bring my wings. You got to sell this stuff, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. But so I finally wrote it down. I had to back engineer what I had done and finally wrote it down. But then, people would tell me, like, listen, this stuff it's so different. You got to sell it. I'm like, I don't even know what is that? How do you even go after something like that? But it ties in nicely with the whole process conversation. Is that how do you do something like that? So, this vision you have of a recipe of a barbecue sauce. You're throwing crap that's in your refrigerator together. How do you turn that into something that you're going to make and make money on? Talk about your break even, right?
Yeah.
So this is now we go back on the timeline that we talked about before. I developed this along the way. There's a whole process you have to do to make a shelf stable product that won't kill people when they use it. I mean, there's food state. I mean, seriously, botulism is a bad marketing. I'm just telling you.
Yeah, it doesn't work for anyone.
No, But I mean, to be able to legitimately sell a product that like this, you have to take a safety class. The recipe has to be approved by a division of New York State,
Wow.
which is tied to the FDA. There's a whole process with the FDA to register the product, and you have to develop what they call a scheduled process, where you define what you're making, how you're making it, what the ingredients are, and what are the critical measurements. So like these have to have a critical pH and a critical temperature at the time of bottling to make sure it's safe and shelf stable. And those are the key things that you have to do. So there's a whole process you got to understand. I mean, you're not just making jam. You're not going to Walmart, buying a bunch of ball jars and making jam for the summer. You're making stuff that's going to be that's a shelf stable product that's going to be, safe. So there's a whole process. And there's a lot of time that was going to be required to do that. So I just never had the time when I was working at Mohawk. I mean, I never had the time to go after it. Then COVID hits, going back to that timeline, COVID hits, I'm out on my own. I'm like, you know what? I might as well get this thing going. So, while I was trying to figure out what else I was going to do, we got the Grill Pantry going. I did my 8-hour food safety class. I did all this other stuff. It's required that we make this in a commercial kitchen. So we had to scope out a commercial kitchen. We, shout out to the Bat and Kill Kitchen in Salem, New York. It's a great spot. That's where we do all our batches. And you get all that lined up, and then you got to start figuring out how's this going. What's a bottle? What does a bottle cost? What does a label cost? What does a cap cost? All that stuff. And I ended up reverse engineering the entire recipe rather than go, because ketchup was part of the recipe, but rather than go buy ketchup, I backwards engineered ketchup. So you got tomato paste, vinegar, sugar, whatever, and so you back it up. You got to back this thing all the way up to the basic ingredients, so you can actually make money. Because if you buy products that are already produced by somebody else, you're going to pay more for it.
But so you're going to pay their overhead.
Yeah, exactly. So you want to break it back down to the basic ingredients. So that's what we did. Is we went, we figured out. Started out with Whiplash, and I kind of got cute with the name of that. It's WIPLASH. There's no H in there. It's Win, Place, Show. So I try to tie into the Saratoga thing.
See, look, I told you up here, you put Saratoga on anything.
So Whiplash,
Pick Six vodka sitting on my table.
There you go. So Whiplash was the first thing that came out, and we launched with that back in November 22. My son actually set up a launch party at one of the bars in Rhode Island. We did that. That was a lot of fun. And then following that came the other two sauces, the Get Jacked with it, which is so this was the original wing sauce, the Whiplash.
Okay.
And it's kind of sweet and tangy with a little bit of heat, not crazy. You'll feel it after a dozen wings, but you won't be crying. And so then we took it up a notch and made Get Jacked. So it's a similar base recipe, but then we added some hickory smoke and a lot more heat. So it's got, again, it's not like one of these ones that, it's going to be in a competition to make people cry, but it's got some good heat to it. And then we made a nice kind of mild, sweet and tangy apple hickory. It's called Hat Trick. So it's got hickory, and it has applesauce right in the recipe. So it's got a nice sweet, that's great on like pork. And so if you're going to do your 3-to-1 ribs, unless you like the spicy, if you like the spicy, that's good on ribs. They're all good on ribs.
My little guy's favorite is he likes Wango Tango from Dinosaur. Okay. Which is interesting for an 8-year-old to like that sauce, but that's his go-to. Yeah. But when we do our 3-2-1s, there's a lot of there's apple cider vinegar that they spend 2 hours soaking in apple cider vinegar and brown sugar. So I don't care what the heat is. Yeah. There's so much brown sugar and other stuff that's soaked into there. A little bit of heat on top of it makes them perfect. So, I mean, you mentioned competition. Have you entered them into any competitions, anything like that?
I haven't. I don't know. I just,
I think Troy
so focused on consulting. I haven't spent much time on that.
Well, I mean, tell your son or your daughter, Troy Pig Out. I think they still do the Troy Pig Out. I think they still do that. That used to be like a big thing where they would go downtown by the riverfront, and you could walk down there. They'd have the police line in the area because guys were smoking stuff all night long in downtown Troy. Yeah. And then we'd walk through and grab different things and try different sauces and all that. That's so awesome. I mean, and you kind of already mentioned it, but with the EXSETIS, that process-driven mindset that you have and that production mindset, how did that help you with finding that commercial kitchen? Like, were you analyzing the commercial kitchens based on the process stuff that you already understood?
Also on the equipment they had, all that kind of stuff. And again, because again, in my mind, I'm an engineer. I think of, how are we going to do it? We got to cook it. We got to bottle it. We got to do this. We got to do that. How are we going to manage the process to make it so it's efficient and it gets the job done? And at the end, because you got to be in a commercial kitchen, you got to pay by the hour. So again, all that ties into, again, your break even. How are we going to make money off of this? So, this isn't making tons of money, but it's in the black. It's covering itself. So it's, from that perspective, it's a successful business, right? Yeah. And the other thing that it's for me, the reason I really enjoy doing it, well, for a lot of reasons, but from what I'm trying to do as a consultant, it's great to talk about, because everyone loves to talk about barbecue. Who doesn't like barbecue, right? But I can connect what I do with the barbecue sauce to what I'm doing with EXSETIS, with process, with analyzing things, with, you can break it down. You can use this as a great example, right, of the things that matter in a process. And, for lack of a better way to put it, it gives me some legitimacy in the entrepreneurial space, right?
Absolutely.
So, it's a great icebreaker to say, oh, by the way, I also make barbecue sauce. Let's talk about that. And then you get into that, and then you can get back to the other stuff.
Everyone wants to hear about that.
Yeah, but it's fun. The family's involved. It's, we got some people that we got fans who love it and order it all the time. And, we're in a bunch of local stores. I have an online store.
What's the online store?
Called thegrillpantry.com.
So simple enough. And they can order it direct, get it shipped right to their home.
Yep.
And all right. How about in the local area? Because I know you're up in Togo, right?
I'm up in Wilton, up near Saratoga. Okay. So I'm up. We got a few places over the Silo up in Queensbury. A couple butcher shops, the Primal in Saratoga dry aged cuts, exit 11. I'm at Han Mellon Farm Market at King Dairy, Sanders Butcher Shop in Boston Spa, Clutch. It's a specialty shop up in Greenwich.
We got to get you in the Freds.
What's that? We
got to get you in the Freds.
Yeah, I got to get to Fred's. A number of people told me that, and I got to get into Fred's. I know I do.
Fred's is the spot, man. Fred the Butcher. I know we were talking the other day, and also Honest Weight Food Co-op. They're great.
Yeah,
they're great people.
Rose mentioned that one the other day. Yeah,
we have a membership as a family to Honest Weight, and what's great about them is they really do push that local vibe. Like they're the kind of place, I can't promise you this, but they're the kind of place where if you were like, hey, can I set up a barbecue sampling here at the store, they'd be like, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I've done that with a number of places. And actually I got a call from a place up in Middlebury or Manchester, Vermont, the La Crusette store up there. They're going to do they want me to do a tasting up there in the summertime. So I'm like, all right.
That's awesome. Ooh, I'll tell you my favorite pizza place, and I like barbecue pizza. I don't know if you ever had like barbecue chicken pizza.
Oh yeah, I made it myself.
Have you ever been to Beer Naked Brewery in
No.
Dude? So it's in Wilmington, Vermont. It's called Beer Naked, and if you look it up, it's either going to pop up Beer Naked Brewery or Beer Naked Pizza.
Okay.
And they're right there. It's called the 100-mile view. You can look out and see for 100 miles out, is what they say. But you can see the Green Mountains. You're already in. You can see the Berkshires, and you're already in Vermont, whatever mountains those are. But they have their own brewery inside of it. They do brick oven pizzas. Nice. It's got one of those kitschy Vermont stores across the street from it, where it's like everything is grass fed something.
Yeah.
And then next door to it's an actual distillery.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a really cool spot. Like, definitely worth it. Well, look, folks, as we got to get ready to close things up here. Paul's got sauces he needs to go make here for everybody. So if you're looking to figure out what he's got going on, again, it's EXSETIS Consulting. You can look him up there. If you're looking for
that's just EXSETIS.com.
EXSETIS.com. You're looking for some good barbecue sauce, grillpantry.com. You can get some barbecue sauce there. I expect to see pictures and recipes from everyone about all these amazing things that they've done and they've made. If you're finding me through Paul or Paul through me, as we always say, make sure you're giving this a like, share, following us on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, all those different social media sites. It really makes a difference. I know it sounds cliche. I know it sounds like just another line, like you've listened to your kids on all their little shows say it, but as always, it's that important. And make sure you're joining us every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Next week, we have a returning guest, Steve Rhodes. Steve was probably on, if I think about it, probably almost 2 years ago. He's got a new podcast called What You Don't Know Yet podcast, where him and he's got a partner just discuss, hey, did you know about this? They each try to kind of throw something at each other about a new thing, what's going on. And he's out in Oregon, which is just the weirdest state, in my opinion. I've determined that Oregon's just like, I talk to people from Oregon, and I don't know if you know this, but psychedelics like psilocybin is legal in Oregon.
Oh, I didn't know that. That explains a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, it explains everything. Especially when I had another guest from Oregon. I don't remember if it was Steve or somebody else was like, yeah, dude, like magic mushrooms go right next to the library in my town. You can just go cut them down and take them home. I'm like, are you serious? He's like, absolutely, dude. They're everywhere out here. I'm like, Oregon is special. It's absolutely special. So make sure you're joining us next week. Now, Paul, this is episode 292, I think. 292.
Nice. Yep.
I've been trying to remember the numbers, which I'm never good at. It's just not my thing. So with it being episode 292, and I know you've binged all the 291 other ones. We've had extensive conversations every Wednesday. This is a Wednesday. You get to talk to me twice in one day. How about that?
I know, twice today. That's perfect. Yeah.
I know. And I didn't talk about anything else random as I normally do. I'm really good at that. Just some random shit comes out of my mouth.
Oh, yeah.
But as we do, and don't log off afterwards, as I tell everyone, but the guest always gets the final word. So what's our final word for tonight?
Process is important. Process matters. And, I'm speaking to prospective clients for my consulting company is that, take a look, take the time to look at your process and understand there's opportunities that you can jump on. It's out there. The opportunities are there. You just got to be willing to go after them. And I'm here to help.
All righty, folks. Be sure to push your stool in. This has been a Second Front podcast presentation found on Apple, Spotify, and wherever podcasts can be found.